Good afternoon, folks. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to be doing this webinar for you today to highlight what's the newest addition to our suite of technical analysis tools. I'm Mike Sedek. I run retail trading for Lightspeed. And back with me today is Peter Ashton. He's the Vice President of Products for Recognia. Now, we've once again partnered with Recognia to deliver you the latest in technical analysis tools. And Peter's going to give us a nice walkthrough of Education On-Demand. And that's the name of this newest offering. Education On-Demand is actually available now to all Lightspeed clients. There's no additional cost for it. So if you're an existing client, you can access it simply by logging into lightspeed.com, and Peter will illustrate this momentarily so you can see exactly where you need to navigate to access this product. If there are any questions that you have as we go along, please just type them into the webinar chat window. We're going to do our best to answer as many of these as possible. And also keep in mind that this webinar will be recorded and uploaded to our website for future viewing. All our recorded webinars can be accessed from lightspeed.com/webinar. So, Peter, I'm going to hand the presentation over to you, and let's get started. Tell us about Education On Demand.
Well, super. Thank you, Mike. So I am Peter Ashton from Recognia, and I'd like to talk to you today about a new Recognia product which has been launched with Lightspeed Trading called Education On Demand. Now, before I get into the details of Education On Demand, I wanted to just speak for a moment about who is Recognia, for those of you who don't know us. Recognia is a provider of what we call actionable investment research content, and we focus primarily on the self-directed brokerage market. We try to automate the investment decision-making process and try to provide ideas which may not come across otherwise. We try to present our research as part of a guided and interpreted experience, recognizing that every trader is also a student. So education has always been something that's been very, very key to Recognia. Now, Recognia's education and technical analysis products are available today from Lightspeed, and they're part of the Spotlight community. So how we got where we are today is that back in 2011, Recognia was on the verge of starting to build an educational product, but to do some market research, we wanted to understand what the requirements were of self-directed traders for education today. So we undertook a survey of self-directed investors to understand their needs. We basically went out and surveyed about 200 active traders worldwide, mainly from North America, but also from other places like Singapore and the Far East. And we asked them a number of questions related to their knowledge of trading, their history, their preferences, forward-thinking trends, and so on. And we condensed down that information into a set of things that we thought were helpful in terms of building a new educational product. And we found the results of that survey to be quite surprising. So I wanted to share a couple of the key results with you before actually getting into the product. So again, we looked at about 200 different active traders. These were people who identified themselves as trading twice a week or more. In terms of trading experience, they were all very seasoned traders, having traded on average of roughly 8 years. And there were lots of people who took the survey who had traded 20, 25, 30 years and more. When we asked people to identify themselves and say what they ranked themselves on in terms of their knowledge of trading, they gave themselves on average a 7 out of 10, where 10 is the highest. So they thought that they were pretty knowledgeable about their trading. So the group that took this survey was really a pretty well-established group in terms of their experience and knowledge of trading. So we wanted to find out a bit more in terms of what asset classes do you trade, and more than 80% of the respondents were trading stocks, about 50% were trading options, and then a smaller number, around 10%, were trading futures or forex. And these were all very rigorous traders in the sense that they all had a trading plan, an investing plan with goals. They were not just out playing around with their money and gambling. They really had a serious set of goals that they were working themselves towards. Now, then we asked them, tell me, what's your ability to use different kinds of research? So, for example, what's your ability to use technical analysis? So rate yourself on a score of 1 to 10, where 1 is a beginner and 10 is an expert. Well, surprisingly, 72% of those very active seasoned traders rated themselves 5 or less in terms of their knowledge of technical analysis. They really felt that they were, below average in terms of their knowledge of TA. We also asked them, what about your knowledge of fundamental analysis? And again, a very similar kind of result. 67% said they rated themselves 5 or less, so they felt that their knowledge of using fundamental analysis was below average as well. So we said, well, what kind of things are you doing to improve your knowledge? So we asked them, what kinds of educational tools are you actually making use of while you're trading? How often do you refer to some kind of educational content while you're trading? So 83% said at least once a week they were making some use of education as part of their trading. 12% said once a month, and 5% said once every 3 months. So again, it's surprising that there's as much education going on amongst this group of traders who we think of as being very, very seasoned. Now, how many hours are you actually setting aside to actually improve your knowledge of research techniques and technical analysis and so on? So we asked how many hours per week or month are you actually spending? So 14.4% of the respondents said they're spending no time at all. But 85% said they were spending at least an hour a month on improving their education related to trading and investing by doing some kind of educational activity. And in fact, a very significant number of these people were doing a large amount of education. So there was 22%, for example, that was doing 6 to 10 hours per week of education, which is a very, very surprising and significant amount. So again, despite the fact these are very seasoned traders, active traders with a lot of years of experience, they still felt that they had a ways to go in terms of improving their knowledge of different kinds of trading techniques, and they were willing to invest significant time in terms of improving their knowledge. So we said, what kinds of education are most important to you? And the results here, this doesn't add to 100% because we've taken some things out, but 36%, the largest portion, said that learning new strategies was the most important thing for them. 24% said learning more about technical analysis was the most important thing. And the third group said learning to manage risk. So 18% of people said managing risk was the most important kind of education for them. And then last, we asked kind of a trending question. You know, what do you believe is going to give you more trading success in 2011? This survey was taken about mid-year. So at that point, the markets had been fairly flat for most of the year. But, you know, the largest group of people, 41.7%, said new educational content to help make decisions in a shorter time period was what they thought was going to give them more trading success. The next largest group, at around 40%, was learning new techniques or getting new capabilities to manage risk. And then there was about 18% said that new kinds of research is what they thought they needed to gain more trading success. So kind of interesting and surprising results, we thought. And what we took away from this survey was that, you know, number one, respondents greatly valued education, but were not satisfied with the current offerings. Even advanced traders make significant use and invest significant time in educational content, and that education was really seen as a key success factor in trading and risk management. So with that in mind, we really felt that there was an opportunity for Recognia to create a new educational product, and we set down the path of actually building something. So the thing that we have launched with Lightspeed is called Education On-Demand. This is something that's available for free to all Lightspeed clients. And rather than, you know, packaging Recognia's view of technical analysis education, for example, we've actually decided to go out and worked with a noted technical analysis expert. So we developed this content in conjunction with Martin Pring. And I think many of you may know Martin, but he's a very noted author, educator, technical analyst. He's written about 10 different books on this subject. He's a very, very frequent speaker at different kinds of events like the Traders Expo, and he lectures not just in North America but around the world, in Europe and in Asia as well. So working with Martin Pring, we put together a syllabus of educational content focusing initially on technical analysis. Now the idea, though, was that you shouldn't have to already bring a certain amount of knowledge to come into this. We really wanted to start this at the most beginner level. So if you know practically nothing about technical analysis, we'll start you at the beginner level and teach you all the basic building blocks you need to know about technical analysis. And once you have the building blocks under your belt, you can move up and learn more about intermediate concepts and then advanced concepts. And the material has been structured in such a way that you can start where it's most appropriate for you, given the level of knowledge that you bring to the equation. So here's a summary of the course syllabus. As I mentioned, the first module, so it's called, is called the building blocks. So this is really the introduction to technical analysis, why you might want to use it, what it's good to help you with and what it's not. It talks about some basic things like methods of plotting and scaling charts in terms of linear versus logarithmic scaling, and then goes through some of the building blocks, like what's a trend, what's peak and trough analysis, how to identify support and resistance on a chart and what they can mean, how to draw trend lines, how do you interpret volume when you're doing technical analysis, because volume is a very key term for almost any kind of pattern interpretation or so on. And then we get into the concept of moving averages, which are really the building blocks of a lot of the future content in this course. So once you have the basic building blocks under your belt, we have another module called Technical Analysis Level 1. And this is to build upon what you already know and introduce some more advanced concepts. We get into the idea of candlestick patterns. So we cover topics like hammers and hanging men, dark cloud cover and piercing lines, engulfing patterns like engulfing bars and so on, and then cover stars and spinning tops and those kind of things. We then go through some marketplace examples of candlestick patterns, so showing you how they could have been used in real market conditions to identify specific trading opportunities. And then get into things like classic patterns. So classic patterns are something very near and dear to Recognia. We wanted to make sure that there was a significant amount of educational content about identifying classic patterns. So we'll cover the basic rectangles like upside and downside breakouts, cover head and shoulders tops and bottoms, double and triple tops and bottoms, the various kinds of triangles are all covered and so on. And then we move into one of the oscillators that's very useful for technical traders, which is Bollinger Bands. Finally, the last module is called Technical Analysis Level 2, and it brings you into the most advanced set of technical concepts. We get into some of the momentum characteristics, how to identify overbought and oversold conditions based on different kinds of indicators and oscillators, what are divergences and how they're used in technical analysis, momentum trend reversals. We also talk about 1- and 2-bar price patterns, so things like inside bars, outside bars, 2-bar reversals, Pinocchio bars, key reversal bar, and so on, and then provide some more background on momentum indicators like RSI, trend deviation, and MACD, and fast and slow stochastics. So the idea being that this walks you through from the most basic concepts of technical analysis into the most advanced concepts at a pace that's comfortable for you. So all of this is offered as video-based training, and you can pick and choose where you want to start and what you want to do. So each one of these topics is organized into what we call a chapter, and you can decide where you want to go today. And each one of the chapters is on the order of 6 to 15 minutes in duration. So they're a nice bite-sized piece of content for you to actually undertake. Now we'll actually see some demonstrations of this in a second, but just to highlight some of the key things, this is integrated right into the Spotlight community website. And you can see here I've logged into Education On Demand. Most of the chapters actually have a video introduction from Martin Pring. So Martin will come on and talk about what we're going to learn about in this particular chapter and why it's important. And again, this is all video based, and you have VCR controls where you can decide to pause it or skip forward and all those kind of things. Once we go through the video introduction, we'll get into what we call the animated concept illustration. So if we're talking about trends, for example, like we are in this case, then we'll have some animated drawings that explain what different trends are all about, how to what's a short-term trend versus an intermediate-term trend versus a primary trend, and so on. So the majority of the content is in these animated concept illustrations. Now, once you've gone through the content and you're feeling comfortable about your knowledge, we actually have built into Education On Demand some quizzes or self-tests. So, before you move on, you can choose voluntarily to go through one of the self-tests and just see if you've actually absorbed the content to the level that Martin Pring thinks is appropriate. So there's at least one, if not 2 or 3 different self-tests as part of each one of the modules as part of Education On Demand. And you can take these tests multiple times, so you can take them once, and if you want to go back and review the content a little bit more and try to see what you missed, come back and take the test again, you can do that and try to better your score. So that is a quick summary of Education On Demand, and what I'll do now is I'll actually log into the Spotlight community, and let's take a look at how to use this. So I'm going to just switch my screen here, and I've actually already got the Spotlight community loaded. And where you're going to find us is when you come into the Spotlight community under Technical Analysis, you'll have a choice of 2 products, Technical Insight or Intraday Trader. I'll explain a little bit more about these in a minute. But under Technical Insight, the one on the left, you'll have these 4 tabs. And the 4th tab is what's called Education On Demand. So if I click on Education On Demand, that takes me into the product. So I have a little banner here, a little welcome message. And the idea is that this product will eventually support multiple different kinds of education. Today it's just technical analysis. But here's the first module as part of this particular course with the Martin Pring Education On Demand technical analysis content. So I'll say get started, and I'll actually go into that piece of content. So at the top we have a little welcome message that talks a little bit about what's the goal of this particular piece of education. And if you're trying to get started, here's some ideas of how you might want to actually get started with the product. And if you don't want to look at this message anymore, you can just say hide welcome message, and you won't have to look at that ever again when you start the product. So down the side you have your basic navigation. As I mentioned, there's kind of 3 modules as part of the technical analysis course. There's the basic building blocks, and then level 1 and level 2, and you can choose to expand any one of those and take a look what's inside. I'll go back to basic building blocks. Now you'll see that here's all the different chapters that are part of this module. In this case, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different chapters that make up this module. And at the end, there are 2 quizzes. So it's up to you when you decide to take the quizzes. You can go through all the courses and then start it, or go halfway through and then start quiz number 1 before you go on to the rest of the content. Now on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see the outline again. You have a little bit of an introduction or description of what each chapter of the course is all about. And you'll notice there's a little check mark next to some of these, and some of them don't have a check mark. So this is all hosted as part of what's called a learning management system. So when I go into the Spotlight community, I log in, and then I come into Recognia, I'm logged in again automatically. So what happens is the learning management system remembers me and what I've done. So it knows that I've already taken this course called Introduction, and I've already taken the course called Trend, and that's why there's already a check mark beside those. I haven't taken the course called Plotting and Scales. Scroll down, here's a couple of quizzes that are available. It tells me I've already actually taken this quiz number 1, but I haven't taken quiz number 2 yet. So it's a good reminder myself of what I've already completed and maybe what's left to come. Now what I'll do is I'll start one of these just so you can kind of get a sense for what's inside. So we'll say watch the tutorial. So what happens is we're going to start a video player, and the first thing you'll see on the screen is you're going to see Martin Pring's smiling face coming on to talk to you about what's offered in this particular building block. This is called the Introduction to Technical Analysis. So these video introductions go on for a short amount of time, maybe a minute. And Martin typically explains what's covered in this particular chapter, what you're going to learn by the end, why it's important in terms of your trading, and so on. And it's all voiced over by Martin Pring. So let me just put my microphone next to the computer for a second just so you can hear a little bit of the content. So I'll just put that back on mute, and let's skip forward a little bit. And we'll get into the what are called the animated concept illustrations. Skip forward a little bit more. This one has a fairly long introduction. So what we do now is actually once we have completed the video introduction, then we have these animated concept illustrations where Martin Pring continues to voice them over, but they basically are a set of animated what are PowerPoint slides that we go through to explain the concepts in this particular chapter. We'll just move on here to another one. I'll say what is a trend. So I want to go into this particular piece of content. I can do that. Again, we'll have the video introduction from Martin Pring, and I'll just skip forward a little bit here, and you can see how in this particular case, Martin will talk about how to identify trends of different durations, the primary trend versus the intermediate trend versus the short-term trend, and so on. And this is all animated and explained. And at any time, you have the VCR controls, so I can come down here and I can pause this if I want to take a break and go get a drink or something like that. You have volume controls. You can make the whole thing full screen if you want to, which is actually a much easier way to watch this. So the whole thing is kind of at your control to go through at a pace which is comfortable for you and to absorb this content in your own way. So that is a very quick introduction to Education on Demand. And again, I emphasize this is free to every Lightspeed account holder, so please take a look, use it, absorb as much as you can, and if you have feedback, we would really love to hear from you. So let me just move back to my PowerPoint slides. And what I've really done at this point now is given you a tool by which you can learn more about technical analysis and understand how to use it in your trading. Now, once you have done that, what comes next? Well, the next step really is to find trading opportunities. So I wanted to point out in this webinar that Recognia also offers a number of other products that are free to Lightspeed clients to find technical trade opportunities. There's a product called Intraday Trader, which provides technical trade ideas for day traders and swing traders based on real-time market data. So if you're a very, very active trader and you have a holding time for your investments for from a few hours to a few days, then Intraday Trader is a product that may appeal to you. We also have a product available on the Spotlight community called Technical Insight, which provides technical trade ideas for short, medium, and long-term investors based on end-of-day data. So if you're looking for investment ideas that you want to hold between 2 weeks and, say, a year, then Technical Insight is probably the product for you. So I'll give you a very brief introduction to both of these products, and then we'll actually spend a couple of minutes just taking a look at a quick demo. So Intraday Trader is a great product for someone who is looking for short-term technical trade setups. What it lets you do is identify trade setups using real-time data. Those trade setups can be defined by you, and throughout the trading day, as new market data comes in, we will flag in real time when those different trade setups that you've defined have triggered. So the starting point for Intraday Trader is the idea of a watch list. So because you're looking for trade setups, you really need to apply that against some small universe of stocks. And what we heard when we were building this product from active traders was that they'll tell us that I trade this basket of tech stocks all day long, and that's all I care about. Don't tell me about anything other than this small community of shares. Or I'm trading this basket of ETFs or what have you. So we let you actually define a watch list and then look for trade setups in that watch list. Those watch lists can be defined completely by you, so you can say create a custom watch list and enter a list of symbols to become that watch list. Or we also provide you with a number of dynamically created watch lists, which Recognia provides. So things like, if you're interested in, some large cap U.S. stocks, we provide the Dow Jones Industrials in a watch list, or the Dow Jones Utility Stocks. Or we'll give you, 300 of the highest volume ETFs in a watch list as well. And we even have some dynamic watch lists. So for example, this bottom one here, most liquid stocks daily. So these are the stocks with the greatest volume trading in the U.S. markets. Now once you've got your watch list set up, the next thing you want to do is define your event setup. So every technical trader has something that's important to them as a trader. And once you've done the education on demand content, you will have a much greater knowledge of technical analysis, and you'll be able to define for yourself what is important to you in terms of a trade setup. So you can build your trade setup completely from scratch, or again, Recognia will give you a library of pre-built setups that you can use when you're new to the product. So a few are shown here: the Big Mac trade setup, which is based on the MACD oscillator, which you would learn about in Education on Demand. The breakout stakeout, which is based on a rectangle or downside breakout chart pattern combined with the Bollinger Bands. And all these concepts are covered as part of Education on Demand. So then once you've defined your trade setup, you can put it into action. So you can apply that trade setup against one of your watch lists, and that goes onto your radar. And once it's on your radar, you will be alerted throughout the trading day as that trade setup is triggering on one of the stocks in your watch list. So that can be the cue for you to go out and do some more analysis of what's going on, and do you want to take a position now in this particular stock. And I'll show you a demonstration of this in just a minute. So that's Intraday Trader, which is intended for short-term traders. If you have a bit of a longer-term trading horizon, but you want to use technical analysis, Recognia has a product called Technical Insight. So Technical Insight allows you to get technical trade ideas every day. It also allows you to validate the technical perspective on any stock that you want. So I'll quickly walk you through those two use cases. So in the case of finding trade ideas, Technical Insight offers you what are called featured events. Every day we'll give you 5 bullish featured events and 5 bearish featured events. And what those featured events are the 5 most bullish or bearish stocks on the U.S. markets in a day based on technical analysis. So in this case, GPK, Gas Star Exploration, I think it was the most bullish stock on the day this screenshot was taken because it had a very particular pattern. In any market, there's both bullish and bearish traders, so we give you both bullish and bearish technical events for the day. Now, for any one of these, you can click on it and get more information about that particular event. So in this particular case, we're looking at Gas Star Exploration, which had a pattern called a bottom triangle. And based on this particular pattern, we're seeing a much higher price It was 327 when this screenshot was taken, and we saw a target price for gas star exploration from 470 to 550. The other way that people can use technical insight is to validate an idea they already have. So maybe you like Apple, or you like Microsoft, or you like Netflix. What are the technicals saying about those particular stocks at that time? So here you can look at a 2-year price history of any instrument, and these red squares indicate where bearish technical events have taken place, and the green dots indicate where bullish technical events have taken place. So in Education on Demand, Martin Pring talks about using a weight of the evidence approach in technical analysis. It's oftentimes not about one indicator or one pattern or what have you. You often need to look at a lot of different pieces of data, and then what is the weight of the evidence telling you about the price action in this particular instrument. So in this particular case, you can see that Netflix was very, very bearish for a long, long time, starting kind of in the summer of 2011, and then somewhere in early 2012 it started to turn bullish, and in fact had a number of very bullish technical events. So you can kind of see how these trends emerge and are validated by the numbers of technical events that are occurring. So I'm going to actually do a quick demonstration of both of those products. So back to the Spotlight community, and I'm going to start with Intraday Trader. So I'm going to just click on this link that says Intraday Trader. And again, as I mentioned, this is a product that uses real-time market data. So this is just initializing itself, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do initially is get myself a watch list. So under the tab called Watch List, there's 3: Event Dashboard, that's right, 4. On My Radar, Event Setup Library, and Watch Lists. I have a number of watch lists that I have built for myself. So I have one called Lightspeed Top 20 by volume. I have one called Oil Stocks and one called Precious Metals. But I also have a number of others that are part of the Intraday Trader library that I can choose from. So here's one that's built dynamically, stocks that are in a long-term downtrend. This is a list of 300 stocks where the price yesterday closed below the 50-day and the 200-day moving average. So if I'm very bearish right now and I want to find bearish trade setups, well, why not look in a watch list of stocks that are already in a long-term downtrend? There's all kinds of other ones here as well, but you get the sense that there's lots and lots of things you can look for here in terms of your watch lists. Here's another interesting one called Top Rated. This is the top 300 stocks in the U.S. by quantitative rating. So Recognia is actually licensing some quantitative ratings from a quant research firm called Columbine Capital, and we're making these available inside Intraday Trader. So Columbine Capital Research, by the way, is normally sold to hedge funds and buy-side institutions. It is extremely expensive. It's tens of thousands of dollars per year for an individual to receive this data. We're making it available inside Intraday Trader as a free product from Lightspeed. So once I've picked my watch list, the next thing is to say, what's the trade setup that I'm looking for? So again, I can build my own custom setup, or I can use one of the setups that comes with the product built in. All these tend to have kind of cutesy names, like Big Mac we looked at before. This is a setup based on 2 particular events, MACD being below the signal line and MACD below 0. So when both of those conditions are true at the same time for a given instrument, this trade setup will trigger. Now, if you took Education on Demand, you would know what MACD is all about, but if you want to refresh your memory about what MACD below the signal line means, you can put your mouse on there and you get a bit of educational content popping up explaining what that particular criteria is all about. One that I'll just point out that I find works really, really well down here is called Wave the Flag. So a flag pattern is a very particular kind of classic pattern in technical analysis. It tends to be a very, very steep run-up in the price of an instrument, and that forms what's called the flagpole. And it's followed by a consolidation period where the price moves kind of down and sideways. And then what often happens is that very steep incline in the price of the stock will resume again following the flag. So flag patterns, I find anyway for myself, are very, very useful ways of identifying stocks that are poised to have a very quick run-up in their price. So if I want to now look for trade setups, I go to what's called On My Radar. So On My Radar is Recognia's terminology for event setups that are being watched against a particular watch list. So for example, this first one, we're watching the watch list called Oil Stocks for the event called Big Mac Bearish. Or the next one is we're watching the watch list called Volume Leaders Daily for the Big Mac bearish trade setup. I'll just quickly scroll down here for a second. I think we have one for Wave the Flag Bullish. Well, here's an interesting one that occurred today on Yahoo. So Yahoo had a very, very steep run up this morning in the price of the stock. That was the flag pole. The price then moved sideways and down, and that formed the flag. And then immediately following that, this green dot indicates the time at which we broke out above the top of that flag pattern. You can see that the price resumed that very rapid incline in price. So we thought that the target price would go to 1585 to 1595, and we're already around 1560 at the close of markets today, so we may resume that tomorrow. But here's a good example that happened just today at 11:30 a.m. on Yahoo, where this flag pattern was very, very good at identifying a steep incline in price that was about to come. Let's go back to March 15th, was a few days ago. So here's Ingersoll Rand, another good company. Again, here's that very steep run up in the price of Ingersoll Rand. The red chart markup shows the flag pattern that we saw. The green dot indicates the confirmation of that setup, and you see the price did actually resume that very steep run up again in price. What's the next one? FMC Technologies. Not quite as easy to see here, but again, there was this very steep run up on Thursday. We had that consolidation period, and again, it ran up to about $53, it looks like, on Monday of this week. So play around with this, but you can find lots of setups which you can find useful in terms of identifying short-term trading opportunities. And the last thing I'll show you in Intraday Trader is the event dashboard. And this is probably where a trader will spend the majority of their time in Intraday Trader. Once you've set up your watch lists, set up your trade setups, put them on your radar, you go to the event dashboard, and this is really the sum of all the events from the On My Radar page being shown on one screen. So you can basically look here for technical event setups as they come in throughout the trading day. Okay, just scroll back a little bit here. So there's that wave the flag on Yahoo we saw earlier, and here it is just showing a different view. But if I click on this button that says commentary, what we get here is a machine-generated commentary that explains in plain English what is happening in this trade setup. So again, here's a different view of that same event. There's that very steep run-up in Yahoo, the flag pattern, and the return to the uptrend. And the commentary says a bullish flag pattern was confirmed at 11:30 a.m. today. When the price broke upward out of a consolidation period, the price seems to be resuming a sharp rally after taking a brief pause. The pattern formed over 3 hours and 30 minutes, which is a rough guide for how long it might take to reach the target price of 1585 to 1595. So there we have, in just one paragraph, here's what's happened, here's what it means, and here's what's likely to happen next. It makes it very, very easy for a trader to go and take some action on this information. And I'm running out of time, but I'll just spend a minute on the other product I talked about for longer-term traders called Technical Insight. And again, under Technical Insight, it's under the Technical Insight tab. And again, we provide in Technical Insight 5 really good bullish events per day and 5 bearish events today called the featured events. So for today, for example, the most bullish stock in the U.S. is Network Appliance, NetApp, which had a double bottom pattern. And this double bottom pattern was confirmed at 45.31, and based on this particular pattern, the principles of technical analysis point to a target price in the range from $55 to $57. So if I click on that particular event, I can get what's called the event details page, and this will give me more information on this particular event. So here's a different view of that particular chart pattern. You can see we had the double bottom here. Here's what's called the neckline. When we broke out above the top of that neckline, that confirms the event, and we trigger a target price of $55 to $57 based on the technical analysis principles for this particular pattern. And that's all covered in Education On Demand, by the way. The other thing you can do inside Technical Insight is you can validate the technical perspective of any stock. So we looked at Netflix before, which I think is a nice example because it's had a lot of price movement recently. But if we look at the perspective on Netflix, here's a 2-year price chart for Netflix. And again, you can see that there was a lot of bearish events starting in the late summer of 2011, and then a lot of very bullish events, in early 2012. So if we scroll down, we'll look at the earliest event that Recognia knew about was a head and shoulders top on Netflix occurring in August of 2011. So there's that particular pattern. And that was indicative that we were about to move into a downtrend. And in fact, we actually blew right through the bearish target price of $140 and actually went much, much lower in late 2011. So I'm going to wrap up, but just to say, there's lots of good educational content for technical users inside Education On Demand. And once you feel you've got a good background in technical analysis, Recognia and Lightspeed also offer a number of technical research products, Technical Insight and Intraday Trader, which you can use to identify technical trading opportunities based on the knowledge that you have. So I'm going to pass it back to Mike at this point and see if there's any questions.
Thanks, Peter. That was a great presentation. We don't have any questions coming in, so I'll just remind everyone that you can go back at any time, review this webinar, as well as our other recorded webinars at lightspeed.com/webinar. And I want to thank you for the presentation, and I want to thank our audience for joining us this afternoon. I hope that our clients take advantage of these products, get online, access the Education On Demand component along with Technical Insight and Intraday Trader like you just showed us, and hopefully this will help everyone's trading. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night, and we'll see you on the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone.